Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Isabella Rata Fernandez. I'm the Managing Director of the IDFA Fund, part of IDFA, and the moderator for this session. Today we're going to be talking about fund applications, what to expect, what to consider, how to deal with your visual materials, but also I'm very happy we have 4 guests that will each dive into the particulars of their own funds. So please welcome Amy Hobby, Tribeca Film Institute, Marie Russo from Doc Society, Hajnal Molnar-Szakacs from Sundance Documentary Fund, and Lucila Moctezuma from Chicken and Egg. Give them an applause. Just before we go into the presentations of our guests, I wanted to show you, there are a lot of documentary film funds around. Some have a very particular or a very specific profile of being for first-time and second-time filmmakers, producers, so people like you. But it's also difficult to find your way to figure out which funds are out there, what are their deadlines, how can I combine this, and how do I deal with all these different applications and requirements that you're facing. So I just want to put up a few websites that you might know, maybe not, but that could be useful in your research when figuring out where which door you can knock for funding. So maybe if we can go to my laptop. First of all, there's obviously, that's particularly for European participants, but there are also a lot of international members, the European Documentary Network, that has, as you can see here, a listing of funds, but if you'll see on the tabs, you'll also see pitching events, markets, and all other kinds of useful lists, just listing all these funds. But there's actually another one that I think is much better, which is of the IDA, International Documentary Association. And then when you click here, they have this amazing interactive Excel sheet that lists funds from all over the world, so US, but also everything that is outside of the US, explaining what their core focus is, the website, the deadlines, the amounts. I went through it a bit quickly, but I think this is one of the most updated sites where you can find information, also with regards to deadlines and changes. Though obviously the advice remains, check the fund before you follow only the deadline that is in this Excel, because, for example, the deadlines of the IDFA Fund are not updated on this website, so we need to let them know that. Then we had invited Khalil Ben Kirane of the Doha Film Institute to be on this panel, but unfortunately he's on a plane now. And I just want to particularly mention this fund because they are, for example, one of the funds that look for first and second-time filmmakers. They do 1 round a year. They look for international projects, so it's not only from the Arab region. And actually, I think if you look at several films that we have this year on the festival, there are like 2 or 3 that have received grants from the Doha Film Institute, and they give grants to the projects, but then also invite the projects to what they call Kumra, that you also see listed here, which is a workshop, a meeting initiative, also with one-on-ones that they always organize in March in Doha. So then, we now go to our guests, but there's also, the big thing when you are applying to funds, reaching out also to other funders, is that you will probably encounter that everybody's asking something different. Somebody wants a synopsis of 400 words. No, then they want a treatment, a project description. So you have like your core text, and then you need to start adapting it to all these organizations. So then came in, I think 2 years ago, the IDA, again, the Documentary Association in LA, and they developed something that is called the Documentary Core Application Project, which basically means it's a core application form using the same terms and the same definitions for logline, synopsis, treatment, project descriptions. And all the organizations we have here on the table use this documentary core application for the application processes. So this is also, can also be useful to look at. So now just to start, maybe, Hajnal, you would start with the presentation on Sundance? So we go to the slides, please.
Sorry, and I'm just going to look at my phone because I can't see the slides, so just so I know which slide I'm talking about.
Can you put up the mic?
Hello?
Thanks. Yes.
All right. Can you guys hear me? So I oversee the Documentary Fund at the Sundance Institute, and I don't know how much you guys know about Sundance, but it was founded by Robert Redford in the early 80s because he wanted to create a space where artists could create without the pressures of Hollywood. And he bought some land in Utah, invited a couple artists, and that's where the first Sundance Lab was born. And since then, the Institute has really grown, and we've added programs. We have now we have documentary film, we have theater, we have sound design and music, we have native fiction. So it's really kind of expanded, and of course we have our festival that most people know about in January. So I'm part of the documentary film program, which moved over to Sundance in the early 2000s from Open Society Foundations. And the kind of our mission, or our driving kind of purpose or motto is that art, reach, and change. So art changes the way we reach people, and then thus affects change. And through our work, we're really, really looking to kind of experiment and play around and see what people are making. And so we really like experimentation and form. We love discovering new voices. We're a global fund, so we're always looking for filmmakers from around the world. Right now we fund about 50% US, 50% international. We're hoping to increase that a little bit. So it's going to be about 50% kind of the global south, which would be Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, China, and then the rest of the world would be the rest of that 50%. So this documentary, next slide, here we go. So the documentary film program, we have a number of activities that we do. So there's the Documentary Fund, we have creative labs and fellowships, we have an Art of Nonfiction initiative, we have international and strategic partnerships, and year-round activities. So I'm mainly going to go into detail about the Doc Fund today, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything about the other items as well. Just to note, our creative labs are actually opening up for applications. Currently, they're open for applications for US-based artists, but if you're an international artist, you can email the program and ask for a nomination. So that's how you can kind of get access to those labs. So just an overview of the fund, right? So the fund, as I said, we support innovative nonfiction stories by both emerging, so first, second-time filmmakers, as well as established voices from around the world. We've granted, since we started at the Institute, over 750 projects from over 61 countries. Annually, we grant out between $1.5 and $2 million to about 40 to 60 new projects. It's extremely, extremely competitive. So we receive about 1,300 applications a year. So 40 to 60 get granted. And then of that, so our applications are open all year round. So you can apply any time it makes sense for you for your project. But we do make decisions 4 times a year. And we have been messaging those decision dates out, as well as kind of the apply by date. So the next decision that you could be eligible for would be in March 2019. And if you're interested in applying for that one, you have to apply by December this year, December 16th of this year, which I have up there.
Yeah, it's already.
Right, okay. So these are just some of our prior grantees, so you guys can get an idea of who we fund. A lot of these projects are actually playing here, I believe. So there's The Distant Barking of Dogs, Strong Island, Freedom Fields, The Science of Others, Caballerango, Minding the Gap, and A Fathers of Sons.
Most of them are also first-time filmmakers.
And most of them are first-time filmmakers, yes. And we came onto these projects at various stages of development or production as well. Strong Island, we came on really early. Distant Barking of Dogs was fairly early as well. So it just depends on the kind of when they apply. We are, though, trying to move our funding to earlier stages away from post-production. So I would urge you to kind of try to apply to us whether you're in development or in production.
Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, why are
Yeah.
you making that shift? Is that also because you want to change the particular way you work with filmmakers?
It's because we feel that that's when we can be the most catalytic. And by coming in early, we're hoping that you can also kind of, because not only do you get funding from us, but there's also creative support that you're eligible for, and you're eligible for kind of our network of, you know, advisors, of other grantees. We always say, you know, making a film is a really, really lonely process, and we're here to kind of listen to your worries, and we're here as an ally, and if we can be along that journey with you, we hope to kind of help you make the best film that you can make. So that's kind of why. And we're reserving our post-production funding primarily for prior grantees. So if you receive a grant in development or production, then you're eligible for additional funding in that post-production category. So what do we look for, right? That's kind of the question that everybody asks for. We're looking for really, is that what's up there? No. Effective storytelling, strong storytelling. We're looking for, and that doesn't mean that you have to have like a 3-act structure, right? It just means that the story has to have kind of, it has to make sense. It has to have kind of a conflict, or it has to be going somewhere. It has to take us on an emotional journey. We're looking for things that are layered, right? They have that meaning, but then underneath it, there's another meaning, there's multiple kind of understandings, and there's an emotional relevance as well that we're looking for. We're looking for, you know, compelling characters, global relevance. What's at stake for the characters? And this doesn't mean that your film has to kind of have a international premiere and be seen around the world. But it just means that if people do end up seeing your film across the globe, that it resonates with them and it's still relevant for them. We're looking for some originality. How are you telling the story that's new, that's refreshing? What's your take on it? What's your directorial voice? And what's your artistic vision, right? We're really looking to, over the past couple of years, we've been really pushing the boundaries of form and content. So we're really excited by filmmakers that want to be kind of experimenting, that want to be trying new things. And that's another reason that we've kind of moved to earlier on stages, is so that we can be part of these creative conversations with you as you try out different things for your project, some of which may not work. And then, of course, potential for social engagement. So, you know, what is the eligibility like? You know, we currently support through the fund only feature-length films. So that is pretty flexible for us. We're 52 plus minutes, 60, whatever, however you want to define a feature-length film, we're fine. We don't, if you're making a film specifically for broadcast, though, we don't support that, okay? As I said, globally, filmmakers are supported without restrictions. You don't need to have, some funds I know need to have like a fiscal sponsor. We don't need you to have a fiscal sponsor. You as an individual would be getting the grant. At all stages of the careers, emerging through established. A note on that, you know, I think on our application it says we require a prior work sample. And this is something that we're fairly flexible on. You know, it can be a short, it can be something that another creative on the team has worked on. It can be if you've written a short story. It's anything that shows us your storytelling ability, right? So it doesn't have to be a film. It can be anything that allows us to see what your ability is to take us on a journey from point A to B to C. And we don't take any rights, just so you guys know. But we do, you know, we require promotional kind of material consideration on our website, and we ask that you thank us in your credits. And just because we're affiliated, we are part of the Sundance Institute, it doesn't mean that all the films we support end up at the festival. So here how do we apply? And I can kind of sail through this, I think, because we kind of touched on it. So the application is online. We do use the core application. As I said, you can apply anytime, but we make decisions 4 times a year. So generally, it's March, June, September, and December. Our next decision that we're considering applications for is in March, apply by December 16th. We do message out kind of the dates to apply by through our social media channels as well as online. So just check, on our website to see what's there. Requirements, development, and production. In development, we normally fund around, the grant amount is about $15,000.
US dollars.
US dollars, right. And when you get payment, it's split into 2 grants. So it's usually, a bigger, like $14,000, and then we hold back $1,000 until you give us some reporting on what you did with the money. But there's no real requirement at development phase. We just want you to be able to articulate the vision for the film, where you see it going, what questions are you asking, and how do you plan on completing it, right? We're also asking that you kind of tell us who are the partners you want to bring on board, what other funding sources are you going to. If you don't have characters yet confirmed, we want to know who the characters are that you're talking to. What are the potential characters? Production post, we do require a reel, so this is a sample from that, about 10 plus minutes. We're very flexible on what you show us. You can show us 10 minutes kind of edited scenes, or you can show us a rough cut. It's whatever puts your best foot forward in terms of giving us a sense of the tone and style for the project, as well as a strong sense of the characters and the journey that they're on, and kind of the emotional journey that we're going to be on as viewers. So then after getting a grant, these are all the things you're kind of eligible for, which I kind of touched upon. There's the creative labs, the doc edit and story lab, there's a music and sound design lab, and there's the producing summit. We also have, the fellowships, which is the producing summit, and then we do have a small program at the festival. And then just kind of informal consultations, strategic and creative consultations that we do as a staff and that we also do with advisors. We have also put together for kind of filmmakers that aren't based in the US, flash labs that are more local to them that, will bring you together with an advisor over a weekend to work out a specific issue that you're having. The key to that is we need you to have a specific issue that you're kind of grappling with and trying to fight through. And then, as I mentioned, we do have a global network through those 750 films that we've made, as well as through a number of partnerships that we have. And then the Creative Distribution Fellowship Initiative. I did want to mention this because if you have a film that's going to be premiering or has premiered in the past 6 months, anybody can apply to this. You don't have to be a grantee, but they offer, if you want to do do-it-yourself or creative distribution, like you want to kind of distribute the film on your own, they offer a grant that helps you cover the marketing expenses, and they offer guidance and advice. If you email them, they can tell you more about that and provide information on how to apply. These are our other initiatives. The one that's relevant for you guys is Science Sandbox. So if you're working on a project that is science related in any way, the partnership goal is really to kind of open up the conversation around science broadly in culture and push science storytelling into culture. And that also includes kind of allowing scientific thinking, and we also do engagement events through this partnership. And you can apply from anywhere in the world at any stage. And also the films don't have to be in English, they can be subtitled, so that's also okay. And then the other one that's relevant for you guys is the Illuminate group. And this is a brand new fund for us, and this is not only nonfiction, but it's also fiction as well as emerging media. And it is, I'm gonna look at my notes for this because it's so new. But it's a focus on projects with a strong potential for social impact. They're very interested in Latin American projects, but broadly so they're interested in international projects rather than US. And that just says a little bit more about the Luminate group. So you can see that. And then our Stories of Change partnership is also something that you could be interested in. It's a partnership with the Skoll Foundation, and it's essentially it's a partnering between a social entrepreneur and a filmmaker aiming to tell the story of the work of the social entrepreneur. And I think that's it.
Hannah, can I just ask you a question? Part of the application form is also to talk about an audience and distribution strategy. And I think I can imagine, particularly for first-time filmmakers that are working with a small team and mainly working on what is my synopsis, what is my film about, this can also be something that they stumble upon and don't really know how to fill it out. I mean, what do you expect from people with these with this part of the application form?
We really expect honesty.
So I don't know will do.
Well, the thing is, it's, we look at the application form as almost like a conversation starter, and we will reach out to you if we have questions. So, if you look, if it's really like looking at your film and thinking about who would want to watch your film, where you'd like it to be seen. We don't expect you to have don't tell us that you're going to premiere at an A-list festival, then you're going to do the local circuit, then you're going to have a theatrical, and then broadcast. Like, every single film wants that, but be realistic for your project and just be honest about why that makes sense, right? Who is the community that your film is really going to impact and touch, and why is that important to you, and how are you going to reach them? So it's more of just being really specific rather than kind of like throwing out these like
rather
big
than
ideas.
having all the answers.
Exactly.
Can I add to that?
Yes, of
I mean,
course.
just it's my personal opinion, but I think it's worth putting in comps, as they call it, comparables. So other documentaries that you're fans of and how they might have gotten out to the world. That just shows that you have some kind of understanding about what a distribution could look like for your film as well.
But in that case, I mean, it's also, you can't mention Citizen 4 as an example with every project. So really look for films that in a way you think speak to a similar audience or a similar festival route as the one that you're making.
Yeah, I don't mean you're like total fantasy, and then I'm accepting my Oscar. But I think that also shows a bit about you understanding that fills in some of the gaps maybe with what your synopsis might have. It just shows that you watch films, because the Lord knows you better be watching the films if you're making them as well.
Yeah.
So it could be small, but it's just that you've engaged with it as part of the process.
I guess it's also, I mean, this question or this section that you run into in an application form, it's also an incentive to get you thinking already at that stage about what am I going to do with my film once it's there. And I mean, as Hajnal said, it's a start of a conversation. I think that's a good one.
I'll add one other thing to that. Like, we like to see that you understand who your core audience is, but also I think it is good for Tribeca at least to talk about how you might expand that choir. Not that you're going to overcome confirmation bias or have someone who will never watch your, but so still being realistic. If this is your core audience, how can you reach a little bit beyond that through creative means? That's really helpful for us, and it shows again that you have a thinking process about it.
Yes, of course.
And then in terms of like audience engagement or impact strategy, not every single film needs to have that, right? So don't feel like you have to write something if it doesn't make sense for your film.
Thank you.
We send out a slightly little bit of the opposite message on that.
The confusion is starting.
So, but, without starting to do my whole pitch yet, but the BFI Doc Society Fund is the national fund for British filmmakers, and it's a creative documentary fund. It's everything but journalism for that fund. So impact at producing and strategies are usually associated more with, say, journalistic funds. And I've just run here from the Global Impact kind of day that's happening, and I'll go back there and hearing different people's strategies. But we feel that a lot of the techniques people use, audience engagement and development in that world, can be put onto any kind of film, fiction, fiction as well. There was a big one with Ken Loach's I, Daniel Blake, that did a lot of outreach to working men's clubs to get the films in those spaces. So I'd say read about that and learn about that anyway, because it's something will sink in that will be useful for you that has to do with how you think about the audience for your film.
Maybe Lisa Marie, you can continue and do the introduction on Doc Society, where there are several funds, but just recently a new fund was launched, the New Perspective Seed funding. So Lisa Marie is going to talk a little bit on all of them, and you also have a clip. So
Yeah,
just
should we start with the clip?
Jos, we're
like
changing
that.
the order. This is the clip of Hill County.
Didn't mean to do that.
Hey, how y'all?
Got my bodyguard now. Got my bodyguard.
Grandmama gonna make some sweet potato pies and some cakes. Shadows around, shadows around. Never gonna
Here you go, here you go, here you go. Watch it, watch it. Oh, 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 oh. Ready?
I've got a float on 321.
So that film, which won a special jury prize in Sundance, but was also in part supported by the Threshold Fund. And that is a Doc Society fund that looks at the most important issues facing the world today and how those stories are told in a powerful, innovative, and unexpected way. The director, Ramel Ross, was a photographer, and this was a first-time film, which is why we chose this trailer for you. And I think you'll hopefully start to see a pattern emerging. Like, we often work together, and these are some new, exciting relationships for me. And that's kind of the good news for you guys, that it's because the journey of getting your first film, any film after that, and documentary funded, means you will be working with multiple partners. And you'll probably be on the festival circuit or the market circuit, and that's great because we all do look for ways that we can help you, but also that we can work in partnership. So this particular fund, the Threshold Fund, is application by invitation only, and there's a few funds that are like that at Doc Society. So that doesn't mean send an email that says, "Hi, can you invite me?" Unfortunately. But it means that if you've come through another fund that might not be right, or we might not be able to support you at that time, that we could invite you to come to that fund. And we do look across funds. There's one that we're doing with the BFI Doc Society Fund that originally came in through these other funds, and we spotted it and then encouraged them to apply for that fund. So just remember that journey's also out there. Other films that were funded through this fund include The White Helmets, which won an Oscar, Whose Streets, Rescue Breath, and Dark Money. I'll tell you a little bit more about the New Perspectives, which...
What I think is important to point out that, and you probably maybe already encountered this, finding money to develop your film, so seed funding, having the time to sit, write, do your research, is not really available. I mean, there are very few funds that fund this, so... That's why it's great you launched this.
Is it possible to put up the website?
Yeah, I can go to it.
Off-piste. So the New Perspectives Fund, its applications are currently being assessed, and decisions will probably be made by the beginning of the year. And its grants, its seed funding between $5,000 and $15,000 US. And I think we'll be looking at doing about 10 projects. And you also will people will receive mentoring on that. And that's documentaries featured on social justice. So quite exciting, watch this space. And I think after we get through this round, make the selection, start working on them, then we'll think about, what the next steps with that might be.
And because you just recently closed
Yeah,
the application,
yeah.
so when do you open up for next cycle?
I think that they'll go through the selections on this one, see where we are, and then take a view on it again. So there's
Yeah,
no.
but the idea is that there will be more cycles a year.
That's the hope.
I have the website on. I don't know if there's something particular you want to show.
Not
went to
all
the
that
fun
where it
section.
says all that closed stuff.
Yeah, they're all closed, except the Bertha Doc Society Journalism Fund.
Well, no, because that's going to wind down now.
Yeah,
That's a bit of news.
it's closing down.
Yeah.
Yes.
But anyone that had received a grant through that, their films will be supported through all of the stages with ourselves and with Bertha. We're doing with Bertha today at the Impact Producers event, and we're vigorously looking for funds to replace that. I mean, is there anyone British in the room or that lives in the UK?
Yes. Two.
Great. So, because I'll just tell you a little bit about the BFI Doc Society Fund, because that's 3 times a year, and that is development and production and completion. And we just got that pot extended a little bit, but that will be announced in a more formal way. But I'm just saying that as evidence of we just keep working and working to increase these pots of money. And with that, we also have short films. We have 10 short films we're making through that fund, and we do road shows around the regions in the UK. We'll do an edit lab, taking some of the learning from what they do at the Sundance edit labs. I think we might come into the process a little bit earlier because we'll be working with our feature film grantees on that, and not everybody is so far down the line. So we might do something a little more experimental, like what avenues might you take at this early stage? Because we do recognize that the world, at least the world in Britain, needs more feature film editors. People are like running, screaming into television or TV drama, and it's such a great way to have an integral relationship with the creative process. So people should think about that beyond it. And also, it's not just a kind of typing job, it's an editorial position. There's also the Circle Fund. That's also by invitation, and that's money from individual philanthropists and family foundations, and we run that on behalf of these individuals and foundations. And some films that have come out of that include Bellingcat, which premiered here last night.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, Chasing Coral, The Possibilities Are Endless, and All These Sleepless Nights.
Okay.
That's
Thank you, Lisa Marie.
everybody.
Amy, Tribeca Film Institute.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy. I guess let's show. I guess we show both clips. Yeah.
Making documentaries is really hard. It's time consuming, it's exhausting, and there's not a lot of money.
There are very few funds that are available to international documentary filmmakers who don't have access to funding in our own home countries.
And having the Gucci Tribeca Documentary Fund is invaluable to filmmakers who are struggling to get stories told and to share those stories with the world.
Mainstream media coverage was moving further away from in-depth coverage of important domestic issues and global social issues.
It's really important for us to be able to support meaningful, thoughtful, mature storytelling, to look at these issues in depth and to reach audiences around the world.
Particularly as a first-time director, I don't know how to navigate this entire world. It's very big, it's very scary, and it's very complex. And all I want to do is make a film.
We were still really finding the story. It was just the beginning, and to be believed in and trusted that early was really key.
I think some seismic shift kind of happens. It kind of gave validation to our idea.
When you become involved in documentary projects like those that we support, it is a journey that you travel together with these filmmakers.
We don't just give the award and move on. We want to be there for them whenever they need something.
We're funding impact distribution of these films, so not just making sure that the films are getting made, but then to ultimately raise awareness and drive change.
Many of the films that we have selected are not just standalone films.
A good film can really, cut through a lot of noise or help crystallize an understanding around an issue.
I'm really hoping to start a conversation around these people that I've been documenting.
We could have made a polemic, but then we wouldn't really be advancing the dialogue.
The goal of that film was really to ask more questions than it would answer about that topic.
Nearly 70% of the films that we've supported through the fund have been awarded to female filmmakers. My personal experience in understanding patriarchy and sexism, it's just so visceral for us, and it's how I unpack everything that happened in this story.
These characters are rising above and portraying images of women, girls, and underserved youth in unexpected ways.
This kind of a fund is important for not just women trying to tell stories, but in encouraging women to step into this field.
We want to continue to champion the work of these women who are, with great courage and compassion of their own, telling these stories that are important for the world to see.
So 2 funds there.
Yeah, so we support, at Tribeca, we support not just documentary, but you'll see from the first reel, we also support narrative films and interactive, hybrid, all types of storytelling. The second reel was about our Gucci Tribeca Fund, which I think is probably our most relevant fund to everyone in this room. It's an international fund supported by Gucci and the Oath Foundation. It's not open right now. We just announced our winners a couple days ago. And the fund has a heavy emphasis on stories about women and girls around the world. This year, all of our winners were women film directors, which I like. Men aren't totally excluded, but women have a distinct edge for this fund. The fund is a juried fund, so you apply, and then the pool gets narrowed down. There are a whole lot of applications. It's really, really competitive. And then there's a jury that not only selects the finalist, but also chooses how to disperse $150,000. So this year, I believe 5 projects got $25,000 each. 4 projects got 25,000 each. There are 2 grants that go only to impact. So 2 of the projects will get $10,000 in impact support from a company called Picture Motion. And that can be the same project that wins. You could win the 25,000 and also get the impact. That's what happened this year. The impact support was on top of some of the filmmakers. So it's our most global fund. It's for stories that are urgent social issues. You need to talk in your application how you feel it's an urgent social issue. And you also need to speak to how there is a global audience and how there is potentially a U.S. audience for the film. And if your film is character-driven and tells a good story, presumably it will have a wide audience. What else can I say about the fund? It's your best shot for this fund is actually not to apply too early. So late production into post-production is the best time to apply for this. And we're in talks right now with both Gucci and Oath about expanding the fund. In a sort of experiment, last month we gave an additional $20,000 to the film Roll Red Roll to create short content, like sort of a short film using some of their outtakes, another story with the same point, so that they can have this as a additional marketing and another way to reach out with the same idea. And that's something we're exploring with funding on top of the fund. So that's pretty exciting. We hope to be able to do more of that. What else can I say? Does anyone have questions about that fund? I don't know when it opens again. You'll have to check the website, but I don't think till next summer.
It's once a year.
Yeah, it's just once a year. Yeah.
Yeah, so somewhere in 2019.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We do have a fund that's open right now. It might be closing on Monday. Tribeca All Access. Just get up and go right now.
The IDFAcademy finishes on Sunday, so...
no problem.
You have the full night.
You can, if you feel you're a slam dunk for this, then... Are there any filmmakers here from Latin America? No. 1.5, 2. Okay.
Just because the Tribeca All Access,
yes,
that's the fund
it's
that is for directors with a project from I wrote it down, traditionally underrepresented community.
Yes, in the U.S.
But how?
In the U.S., that's why. So that's for filmmakers of color, women, LGBTQ plus filmmakers in the U.S. It's a U.S.-based fund. This year we expanded it, the reason I asked about Latin America, to include 2 scripted and 2 doc projects from Latin America, because for many, many years we've had a Latin America fund. We support a great number of scripted and doc projects from Latin America. So it's our hope as we move forward and raise more funds for Tribeca All Access to expand that to a global fund. And how we define that is part of what we're working on right now. But right now it's filmmakers traditionally underrepresented in the U.S. Media. So it's very specific. Are there any people in here who are Tribeca alumni of any sort? Okay, so the good news for you and for any of you that ever get a grant or participate in our network is we have a brand new fund that just supports our alumni. And it's going to be open 3 times a year. And it's to support the filmmakers as much as a film. Right? So your best shot at it is to say, I'm a filmmaker, I'm in between projects, or I have a film, I'm self-distributing, I need some marketing help, or something like this. It's recognizing that filmmakers sometimes need that very early support for a project, so it can be very very much seed funding, or I'm doing some education screenings, sort of that tail end of a film. So it's pretty open, and we open and invite people to be creative with their ask. With our Old Alumni Fund, for example, someone did a documentary about race, and she wanted to develop a card game to go and help people talk about some of the issues in her film, and we gave her a grant. So it's a very creative fund. It's now called the Pond 5 Fund. It's in collaboration with an archive house, Pond 5. So we will be awarding, you can apply and ask for mentors, you can apply and ask for sort of more micro grants up to $7,500, 3 times a year. Very flexible funding, and again, like hybrid, interactive. You're a doc. You usually make docs, but you want to explore something. You want to go to Berlin and attend a market. All of these things to further your career. So that's something new and exciting that's happening with us. And what else do we have going on? Oh, so we have something that might periodically be relevant, which is called If Then. It's also a relatively new program. It's about 2 years old, supported by MacArthur Foundation, and it's to support regional filmmaking in the U.S. and globally. So, for example, in February, we opened the fund. Well, right now, the fund is open for filmmakers living and working in the American West. But last year, we did one for filmmakers living and working in Southeast Asia. And we gave 5 grants and supported 5 short films. So basically, you apply with your project. It can be very early days. You can have shot a little something on a cell phone or whatever to talk about your idea for a short film, up to usually we say between 15 and 30 minutes. And if you get picked, then you come to a forum. In that case, it was in Bali. And you pitch in front of industry who are gathered, such as Isabel, and people from Doc Sport Incheon, regional people from POV broadcasters. And the short films get lots of prizes, but one film will get fully funded, and that includes a year-long distribution initiative. So one film from this August already has been set up to work with The Guardian in the UK. It's called Diary of Cattle. It's from a filmmaker very first film based in Indonesia. Another film got selected for a much bigger prize, $50,000, to work with Al Jazeera to become a program for...
Maybe just interesting to mention, Amy, that Diary of a Cattle has a cow as a main character.
Yeah, the main cow
just to give you an idea that
that
can work as well.
Yeah, it's actually they follow 3 cows who have different personalities, who live in a garbage landfill, and so it talks about environment, but it is it's a great project, and I think Isabel selected one project to come here to IDFA, right?
From the Philippines.
Yeah, from the Philippines. So we're kind of moving around the world. We're doing approximately 3 U.S. We have a lot of problems in the U.S. if you haven't been reading the paper. So we've been trying to do some regional U.S., get outside of New York and L.A., and reach out. We did one in the American South, American West. We do the Midwest. We just did one at Northeast at Doc NYC last week, and then we do 1 to 2 international pitches a year. So we're looking to do one in the Middle East, North Africa region, potentially in 2019. But we're constantly looking for partners, but the idea is to fully fund some of these films so that the stories can get made a little bit quicker and launch you into a career path. So that's one of the main things we're doing with emerging filmmakers.
Okay, thank you. Then, last but not least, Lucila, chicken and egg.
Yep, thank you. I think we can start with the clip.
think that someone should see this.
We have to make change!
The only way anything is ever going to change is if people can see us.
Come on, come on.
I have to know that I have done everything I could possibly do to keep that clinic open.
It's going to be a showdown.
That's good, you're helping me.
I want to change the subject and ask if she was always such a great dresser.
Kaže, jeste se uvijek tako fino oblačili, imali stila?
Uvijek. I'm a rapper.
I'm a rapper. من فردام روشنه نخو غم من قول نمیخوام میدونم چیه سهم من. Saya direct saya isa susunod anak mo eh. Nagkulang-kulang yung pagmamahal sa mga bata eh. Dapat breakfast eh.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We are constantly telling ourselves a story about who we are and where we're going.
This is the kind of work I want to do. I want to impact injustice.
I'm still strong.
I'm not going to give up this fight.
This is what we have to do.
That was edited by the filmmaker Jean Schlesinger, who's editing our new reel for the last 2 years of films we've supported. So yes, Chicken and Egg Pictures is an organization in the United States that supports women or individuals who self-identify as women, who are nonfiction filmmakers from all around the world. We support films that are meant to or intend to have some kind of social impact, understanding that in a very broad perspective. Personal films, apparently small stories, can have a lot of impact or resonate with a bigger audience. And we also support creative storytelling, filmmakers who are pushing the boundaries of creativity or pushing themselves through each work they're doing. And we also strongly support filmmakers or encourage filmmakers to have sustainable careers in the field. We see a world in which an industry that is currently male-dominated, as we know, we want to see more women filmmakers in the industry, more women being hired, more women being confident to charge as much as a man would charge, or come into the room and talk about the project with that confidence that can be learned or trained or built within yourself. But we find for some reason, we women, we sometimes doubt ourselves, and we need to talk about it. We have workshops around it. Our programs are all linked to mentorship and grants. We don't only give grants, we don't only give mentorship. It's blended together because we realized that being part of a project with a grant only was not, money is very important to make the film, but we were not going or taking the filmmaker as far as we wanted or thought we could. So with that in mind, we stopped giving just grants and we started a series of new programs, of which the most important ones are at this moment, or our signature programs at this moment, are the Accelerator Lab and the Breakthrough Filmmakers Initiative. We just had,
Jos, can we go to the laptop?
Yeah, I mean, that's just to have a visual image, but you can go to the website. I'm going to talk about the Accelerator Lab because that's the program that I think is more relevant for you
because
here.
It's for first and second time filmmakers.
It's for first and second time filmmakers. who have shot at the time of applying between 10% and 60% of the film, which means that if our deadline, which is usually opening in May and closing in June, if you get accepted, by the time the program starts, you will have shot maybe 80 or 90, but there's still a chance to go back and shoot again, or find different character threads, or rethink something and still have more to shoot. So this Accelerator Lab is a one-year program, again, for first and second time filmmakers, women or individuals who self-identify as women and their partners. Male directors become part of the program if the project is accepted, and they have to attend the retreats and they have to participate in the mentorship. We offer this one-year mentorship includes 3 retreats. 2 of them are somewhere far away from a city. So far they've been upstate New York. We're considering California. We have an office in California. And for 1 week, we workshop the project. We watch material. We give feedback. We have a very creative focus on talking about the project. And then we switch to talking about strategic planning and career. And in between, we have some sessions that talk about distribution or fundraising, depending on where the group is. We tailor each year, depending on who we have. It's for 10 projects. We are thinking of increasing to 12, but that might not happen next year. So those are 2 retreats in the spring and in the fall. And in June, we go to Sheffield with all the projects to have a live pitch and organize individual meetings for the projects that are part of the lab that are not part of the mid-market. We have a partnership with Sheffield, which they allow us to organize our meetings in the market, in the mid-market building. And we have monthly calls, check-in calls. During the year, with the projects we are supporting as part of the Accelerator Lab, we actively look for potential sources of funding. We introduce them to our donor base, or we try to connect them or encourage them to apply to those opportunities that we think are appropriate for each project. And we give a $35,000 grant for the project, which is disbursed in 3 installments, and they're very linked to deliverables and attendance to the retreat. Some people want the money but don't have time to attend the retreats, but some people want the retreat so badly, and this is for those who want the retreats and the mentorship. The money is cherry on the cake, but it's not about the money.
Maybe just because I don't know if everybody is familiar with the fiscal sponsorship system in the US, and you do require a fiscal sponsor, so maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, we require a fiscal sponsor because so we give money, the way many of these organizations give money is as if we're donating it to a charity. And individual filmmakers do not have a charity status or register as a charity, so we donate, you have to go through a fiscal sponsor. A charity registered organization such as Women Make Movies, who has that ability, that capacity of receiving money that is donated and then gives it to the filmmaker.
Yeah, and takes a very small percentage,
and
like
takes a
1
small
or 2%.
percentage. There's several, no, there takes 7. I used to run the fiscal sponsorship program.
Sorry.
So, yeah, it's because they give services. They give advice, they watch rough cuts, they give a lot of also connections, they give services. There's different fiscal sponsors, and we can recommend the different options because some just give you the money, but there's no services. And some have services and carry some prestige that you might also want to have on your project.
But do you require the fiscal sponsor when you apply?
No.
Or is it something that you help with once you have selected?
Exactly. We ask if you have a fiscal sponsor, but if you don't have to get one until we tell you you were accepted. That's okay. And then we can help you get one. I mean, usually Women Make Movies will right away do it, yes. But if we'll tell you different possibilities. Doc Society also is a fiscal sponsor for some of our projects.
How competitive is the Accelerator Lab?
It is very competitive. Oh, one thing I wanted to emphasize is we are trying to support diversity on every front through the programs, through all our programs. But the program includes, we're trying to include not only international, but also regions that are not represented broadly in the industry, which is usually known as the Global South, but not necessarily. Like there are certain regions in Europe, for example, that need more representation and support in the film industry. Also, people of color in the US, or LGBTQ communities, or geographic diversity within the US, because it's very bi-coastal. And it's very competitive, not as much as Sundance. I don't know how you handle so many. We received this year 450 applications, and we select 10. Right now we are on the third round, reading 35 proposals, and I can say, like, the top 80 are good. That from the 50, we could like handpick, like just like randomly pick 10, and they would be very good projects, and they're very good stories, filmmakers who need the support and make a good case for why they need the support. So while it is very competitive, everybody has an opportunity. There's people who've been sitting where you are right now who then became part of the program. And I mean, you made it here. Congratulations, you're part of the Academy. That's also a big deal. So it's competitive, but you have to try it. And if you try it and you don't get it, you have to try it again, and you have to apply again. We've had filmmakers who applied before, didn't get it, and then got it on the second year. And I work in programs where people got it on the third. So as long as you haven't finished the film, you have to keep trying. And if you can get feedback, it's great, but you cannot always get feedback. And I don't know if we talk about proposals right now.
Yeah, let's, but maybe before we break into that, I mean, you've been listening to all this talking. Maybe some of you have questions so far. You don't have to. We have lots to talk about. Yes, here up front. At what stage do you apply for the Chicken and Egg Fund?
You have to have between 10% and 60% shot at the time of the application. That means by June. We don't measure it. What this means is that if you have 10%, it means that you started shooting, you have identified your characters or main character, you've spent some time with your main character, or place, or you've identified place. And we can see that in a sample. The sample has to be between, we have the documentary core application, but we vary a little bit of what we ask in the samples because we found different stages. For us, it has to be minimum 7 minutes and maximum 20 of the project you are proposing. And if it's 7 minutes, it's okay if it's early stages. But you have to have shot something that gives us a sense of those things, character, place, and also your style. Because if it's just interviews, it might not be as strong. But we've seen some samples of projects that have gotten funded that the character is so strong, the interview is so compelling that you want to see more. It creates curiosity. I want to know where this goes. And that can be very helpful. But it's rare that just interviews will get you far, but it could. But yes, 7 minutes nicely worked is better than 20 minutes very loose. And one thing I want to say about the samples, and the maximum 60%, as I was saying, is because by the time the program starts, you're still open to making changes after we go through the labs. Because we don't want to get to the lab and you know what you could have done, but you already locking picture in March, and then what's the rest? And I was going to say, and about the samples, we do accept trailers or combination of scenes, excerpts, raw footage, but put your strongest sample at the beginning. The trailers are good, but they have music, they have a little bit of everything. We don't need to know what the story is about through the trailer. That's why you have the project description that you write. But we want to get the feeling of it, the style. So a scene, 2 scenes put together, 10 minutes in total is stronger sometimes than a very slick trailer. With
for us as well. The trailer, we don't know what's getting manipulated, all this. Like 2 really strong scenes is usually like a slam dunk for us.
Yes.
And I think often it's very much goes back to how you name things. Do you call it a trailer, a demo, a teaser, a scene? So, I mean, if you call it a trailer and it's not actually a trailer, when a committee reads it, it has a certain expectation of what it's going to see just because it's called a trailer. So it's very much, I mean, instead of developing and working according all these fixed ideas of what it should be, you should really go back to the core of what you have as a story and as the material, and then see how you can combine the visuals you have, the writing you have, to bring it across the best way according to what you want to make, and not definitions of trailers, teasers, demos, or that's why actually, I mean, I think what Lucila is really saying, I mean, if you are making a film where that is really character driven, where you were drawn to it because you have such this amazing character on camera, so then the most important thing is to bring that across, and that you do by making a character reel, for example. So then it's not important to have a trailer, because in your treatment you can talk about how the story will develop or how you're planning to structure it. So it's very much, I mean, it's really going back to to your own project. So looking at it case by case, I would almost say. There was somebody else who had a, yes.
Maybe my question going to everyone, because I'm making my first film. I'm writing an application. The main difficulty for me is who is my core audience. So I think it's very necessary to explain to me how to write, how to figure out who is my audience.
So. Okay, you're writing your applications and you're running into the question of answering who your core audience is, and now you're asking us who your core audience is.
How to know?
Yeah. How do you figure out who your core audience is, or who your potential film would speak to? Yeah.
I suppose I feel like I talked about that a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Look at other films that are like your films, maybe 5, and research their distribution strategy, their festival strategy, see who their sales agents are, who their funders were. Just use that as a kind of model and see if that helps you understand where your film's going to fit in.
Right, and another thing is our organizations, or in the U.S., many of our organizations receive funding from donors or other foundations that want to have social impact. So that's also why we support a lot of films that are going to have social impact or are going to have some kind of encouragement for change. So we're not supporting films that just want to go to festivals. If you say you want to go to festivals, that's great, but that's going to build your career and your prestige. But your film it's meant to go somewhere further. So there's an issue there where there's a core audience. If it's a personal story about mental illness in your family, then there's communities and hospitals and centers that deal with mental health issues, or with families that have family who have these issues. So that becomes your core audience. Those are the people who care about what your film is about. So if you have done some research about those centers or those institutions that are audience and potential funders, then that makes your case stronger.
And
yes, Amy.
I mean, I would just back it up and say, why are you making this film? Like, why this film and why now? And then, back it up and then think from there.
Yeah. I mean, and also the why are you making this film now, the timeliness, but also why are you making this film? That was actually something that I wanted to get back to. I mean, one of the things that you've heard coming back with, I guess, the 4 guests we have a lot is social impact, change. And you might be a filmmaker who wants to make this poetic, cinematic essay and are wondering, what am I to do with this? I mean, you're totally in your right. And I think it's very much, I think this whole idea of social impact obviously is also something that is coming more into play, I think, from Anglophone countries, more than it is here, for example, in Europe, with if we look at national funding bodies that are here. But at the same time, don't be scared by it, because it doesn't mean that you have to make a journalistic piece that is going to change the world. There are many, it's a very broad definition, and there are many ways that can lead to change and lead to finding your core audience, or the audience that your film will speak to. Because in the end, at the core also of all the funds that we have here, there is also an artistic idea of how films should be made, that you are also expecting from the films you're supporting, even though they might speak to that particular audience or community and go for change. So it's not only about social change. It's also about artistic creativity.
But I think, oh, sorry.
Yes, no,
Well,
go ahead.
if you're making an artist film with a capital A, I think all these things still apply. You know, if you were making that in Great Britain, you might look towards places like the big institutions, Tate Modern, but to the ICA, which stands for Institute for Contemporary Arts, that's who's distributing Hale County in the UK, and you see who could those partners be that would help you get the film out that exist in the world of your film.
In that sense, Hale County is a very good example of a film that speaks about social issues in a community in the US and at the same time has a form that is totally out of the regular. So yes, one other thing that has also come up, which I guess is the most not encouraging one, is the competitiveness. I mean, Lucila already encouraged you, don't be bothered by it, come back and apply and apply and apply. But yes, the competitiveness is tough. I mean, Hajnal, I think Sundance is the worst or the most competitive, sorry, the most competitive. With that regard, is there something you can say about that? I mean, towards filmmakers, because you're the one who gets thousands of applications a year.
So I think it is really competitive, but I think, you know, like I said, it's the start of a conversation, and you know, of the 1,300, we go through a process where we narrow the pool down, and it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and we have a group that's we call it the finalists. They don't necessarily get grants, but we engage with them in a conversation and we provide feedback. And, you know, part of it is we're really excited about filmmakers that are trying new things, and there's no kind of restrictions on how many times you can apply to us. The only thing that we ask for is that if you apply once and you get denied, the next time you come back, show us that you've advanced the film in some way. And, you know, the thing is, we're people, and even though we have a small team, if you have questions, just email us and ask, like, you know, how could I have made my application stronger, or what was it that didn't come through? And it might take us a little bit of time to apply, respond, but we do generally try to respond to all these kind of inquiries. So just think of it as a dialogue, and don't give up. And also, you know, like it was said earlier, we are in constant conversation as well. So even though you might not be right for our fund, I might refer you to somebody else. I might say, hey, Doc Society, have you guys seen this film? Or Chicken and Egg, this is a really exciting film. You know, so just think of it as like an opening of a relationship, right? And also the entire process is a relationship, because once you get a grant from us, then we're really in it together.
I was reminded seeing the trailers of, we also have a program called Good Pitch, which is an international program, and it brings together filmmakers and their projects with potential funders. It could be NGOs, charities, brands, other funders in our kind of sphere, but Writing with Fire, which was a chicken and egg project, was a Good Pitch project.
IDFA Fund.
Whose Streets.
And Sundance. So,
Whose Streets was a Good Pitch local, which is an American version, which looks at projects can come in that might not be features as well. And I think Silence of Others might have been Good Pitch. It had some engagement with Doc Society. So.
It's an outreach project from Doc Society. No, I mean, that's one of the other things is obviously, you need a strategy. That's also, I guess, figuring out deadlines and stages where you're in, but you can go to Sundance for development. And then, as Amy said, she's looking more for projects that are at a later stage. So it's figuring out how you navigate this strategically, and very often, I think the five of us sitting here at this table, and obviously the IDFA Fund is only for a specific part of the world, get in on projects, on the same projects at very different stages, bringing also in something very different in support of the filmmakers. Were there some other questions? Yes.
I wanted to ask about if the film is a hybrid film with a special construction on the form, but still with a social impact and everything. I'm I'm wondering what would be the best way to write a proposal. I mean, in our case, we're working now in a script form, not a script as a fictional film, but would this be accepted instead of a classical treatment? And also for the image, for the reference images, would a mood trailer, because to shoot already the images we would need the money because it's...
Hence the chicken and the egg.
I'm laughing because I know them, I read their project, and I thought, what's this going to be? And then I met them, and we had a one-on-one conversation, and they totally changed my view on the project. And yeah, it's I mean, working, I guess in the end, what I would say is, it comes down to there is not a particular way. It's also about finding the best way to bring across what you are aiming to do. And I guess in your case, it's very much also the combination about how you're writing about it and how the visuals you have complement that and fill in those gaps. I mean, you guys supported Hale County, for example. I mean, just as an example, that I don't know if you know this, I know if you read that proposal, but was that like a very narrative presented kind of project? Because it's very informed, very hybrid.
It changed a lot, right, during the process too. So we actually met Ramel at an event, and we were kind of blown away after talking to him about his vision for the project. And, you know, the narrative, he was still, because it was so early, he was still trying to figure out what he was doing. So it wasn't like, it didn't end up, like what he started with wasn't what he ended up with. And he also went through our Art of Nonfiction initiative. So he was one of the fellows that, I think there's 4 or 5 fellows a year. And it's a year-long kind of fellowship where they have different gatherings, and it's really curated to the individual. And you're really kind of pushed to work on your creative voice, and it's not really project-oriented, but really like director-driven. What kind of support do you need to realize who you want to be as a storyteller? And it changed so much.
So we also supported Hale County very early on. I think prior to Sundance, the project came to Tribeca All Access, which is again 5 scripted projects, often very early support, and went through our 3-day network and meeting industry and all of that stuff. And at the time, the project was not the least bit narrative or knew where it was going. And, you know, I think one thing that we do with Sundance is we often we're in communication, particularly on the scripted side, maybe even more so on the doc side, but those early projects that come through Tribeca All Access, we recommend them to other labs because we don't have the capacity to do some of the things that Sundance or Chicken and Egg or have that depth. Yeah, we just don't have the...
Just Hale County this morning, this film we're referring to is showing at the festival, so if you have a chance, go and see it. But I would because in a way there was something there while he was presenting the project that convinced you all, but then like this whole conversation and dialogue started.
It was him, it was really him.
It was him and his visual language.
Yeah.
There was something in that material that you were like, oh my gosh, this is new.
Yeah, this is like so it was a little bit the footage, and then also for Tribeca All Access, we get on the phone with the filmmakers before selecting them. So it was that combination. Yeah, more so than the written materials at all. Yeah.
I think, well, I'm a big fan of the mood board. I mean, really, really thoughtful ones that, you know, things that inspire and influence and are like pushing you in a direction. But in a kind of related matter, on our applications, people are asked to do a 1-minute motivational video, and it's like been a revelation to me because it says so much about what, you know, who you are and what you want to do. And sometimes when people, if they think they're too experienced and they don't put it in, that's not cool. If they're scared and they've suddenly just made some little trailer for the film, or they sit there and give the synopsis, you're like, no, we've asked you, why do you want to make this film? And just do it on your iPhone. It's not fancy, but, you know, really think about that. If you're asked to do that, like, think about how you want to say it and just be you.
Yeah.
And if there's something that stands out about your process, it's worth mentioning. Like, for instance, it's very common to see in applications that filmmakers want to use reenactments. And it's become just like one more line in the proposal. But for instance, one recently said that this is about revisiting a family's history where his sister was murdered. And he went back to his town, it's in the US, and he is going to reenact some situations with his family about the sister's murder. That's like, it's intriguing. It's like, oh, I want to know more about this. So the more you talk about your process, the more we know it's different from like using generic words or terms or language, then the more you're likely to pull attention to it.
It's a little bit, reenactment is a little bit the same as suddenly reading animation. And not knowing
I
why.
will use reenactment animation. We'll shot it in Veritas style with some interviews. That's very general. So zone in.
And also, don't wait till 5 minutes before the deadline and then call us up crying. I mean, and you know, really try to get your application in well ahead of the deadline. And if you have questions, then ask them.
I think this is a lost cause, Liz Marie. It's human nature to apply last minute.
We have the one that's closing tomorrow, a scripted fund. I said to our team, like, how many applications? And they're like 30. And I'm like, what? And they're like, there's 600 in draft form.
Oh yeah, we have that as well. But it's it's when you call 3 days later and say, it just occurred to me, maybe I should have put it in. That is an indication that the timing wasn't right for you.
But that's brings us to another and maybe the last interesting question: the timing. When are you ready to apply for something? I think I read this on the Sundance website. Submit your film only when you have written or visual material that demonstrates your creative and storytelling intentions. Talking about timing, Often also, Sundance is you accept projects several times, but not all funds have this rule. Sometimes you only get one chance in a certain category.
But if you apply again, it must not be the same proposal.
No.
Yes.
Or the same sample.
What
many people
Hajnal said
out.
earlier.
We track and we see the notes from the previous year, and often it is the same as you, the second time someone applies or even the third time, but we have that conversation like, oh, look, this project has progressed since last time. Trust me, we know if you submit the exact same thing.
Yeah, we have data. One last question, if there is from the audience. Yes, here up front. The Good Pitch.
So there's a dedicated Good Pitch website. So I would say go on there and have a look around. And if it doesn't answer the questions for you, then write to us, because they're run in different countries all over the world. Depends on where you are, where your film's set, where you are in the process.
Yeah, which brings me to my closing note. Do your research, because we have 4 funds here that each there are similarities, but also each have their specific profiles. Often, all the funds have extensive, frequently asked questions that, doing the research for this panel, I can tell you are really useful, because answer all kinds of questions on even what do you mean by logline and what is a synopsis. So it's really worthwhile investing in this, because it might also save you time. You might also discover, oh, this is not a fund for my film. So then you don't go on and you go to the next one and look for it.
Yeah, we have FAQs on our website, so you can go through, and it's best to read through that before you email us and ask us a question.
No, but also, particularly, but I went through them also to get a sense of what are they looking for example, and also all the other maybe technical questions you might have.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, Lucila, you get the last word.
I just want to add one thing about proposals, budgets. We often get asked for sample budgets. We don't share budgets, but one of the reasons for which we ask for budgets is we're not going to hold it against you if it's too much that your film is going to cost. It does look naive if it's too low. Like if we have a $50,000 budget for a feature-length film, it looks like you don't really know what it entails, even though you might make it. So we want a realistic budget of what things cost. That's why you need to submit budgets. This is what it costs, this is what it takes to make the film. If you get everything for free, great, but don't tell us, unless it's something in kind that, like, it's a great cinematographer and he's going to donate his time. And also include salaries, your salary and your staff, your producer, your editor, cinematographer.
You can always defer it later, but just put it in so it just shows that you understand what these things cost.
I mean, and you make your budget in combination with a finance plan, where obviously contributions you're getting in kind or your deferrals, you can add to your finance plan.
And it's okay if post-production costs more than the other stages. It's real. Yeah.
Okay, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Amy, Lisa Marie, Hajnal, and Lucila.